John's. So there's lots to look forward to in our chat with Sheilagh O'Leary. And she's also recently been named the chair of the Municipalities NL Women's Caucus. So lots to chat around about women's involvement in politics and the municipal sphere as well. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with Sheilagh O'Leary and all of those topics.
You're watching Rogers TV, St. John's.
You're magic, like me.
I always called it the shining.
Get out of my head! Get out!
I haven't felt power like that in so long.
Until we can get you back to your parents, we're in charge.
When you go like that, it's not helpful.
Did we kill you?
You're watching Rogers TV, St. John's.
Welcome back to Out of the Fog. I'm here with the Deputy Mayor of the City of St. John's, Sheilagh O'Leary. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much.
And of course, the city is, kind of coming down off of the madness that was Snowmageddon and the state of emergency and all that.
Absolutely.
And so from the city's perspective, I guess, are we back to normal yet?
No, we're definitely
answer.
not back to our normal yet. I think from the public vantage point, certainly a lot of people are, are back to school, back to work, trying to figure out their regular routine. We still have public works staff on 24/7. We have, it's going to be going for quite some time. The weather has just not been our friend, and as you saw, the weather just recently, certainly with the rain and then the freezing and the ice only solidifies all of that hard snow that's out there. So we still have a ways to go yet, and I can't say enough about our staff and service providers because they've been working so hard for so long.
So, a lot of people had the week off work, which, could be good or bad depending on your situation. But for you, I know that you and the other councillors certainly did not have that week off. So take us inside kind of how the decision-making process and how that happens from the city's perspective, dealing with a situation like that.
Well, we have an emergency lead. David Day certainly is stationed within our regional fire department. And of course, we had excellent communication between the City of St. John's on a regular basis. So no, there was no holiday for any of the council members. We were in constant communication with each other. Certainly the mayor, the city manager, myself, and our other colleagues as well. It was a moving target. There were so many decisions to be made. And, I think considering how extreme the weather was, I think that the city actually did a very, very good job. I think that really what stands to question now when eventually we get to the point of having a post-mortem, because there's always lessons to be learned, always improvements to be made, is certainly our regional cooperation and how we can tackle that certainly going forward.
That's right, because I noticed that you said there was a lot of communication between the city and the different kind of aspects of the city, whether it be the police or the snow clearing operations and all that. But there didn't seem to be a lot of great communication between the municipalities. And so going forward, do you think that there's a way that, I guess state of emergencies can be called or at least communicated better between neighboring cities and towns?
Absolutely, and of course we have a fantastic working relationship with especially our Northeast Avalon colleagues, and I know that the mayor was in constant contact, certainly with the mayors and points of contact certainly in the other municipalities. But I think when you're talking about emergency preparedness, I think it's extremely important. I mean, the conversation of the day right now is all about regionalization.
That's right.
And I think that this is a perfect example of how we really, truly need to have a better plan for how we attack the whole area. Because there's not one municipality that's ever going to be impacted when we talk about weather patterns or climate change issues or flooding or fires or snow blizzards.
Right. And on that about regionalization, I know certainly in your role as deputy mayor, you're focused on St. John's, but you've had a lot of experience in the provincial realm as well. So that regionalization conversation obviously goes beyond the snow clearing and into, recently it's been focused on fire fighting and how unincorporated municipalities aren't necessarily covered by fire services.
Right.
So do you think that there's a bigger conversation to be had now?
I
What can
think
we
there-
look forward to in regionalization?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you're absolutely correct, and certainly I would concur. I would defer to our president of Municipalities Newfoundland and Labrador, Sheilagh Fitzgerald, who has got a fantastic perspective, and she's come out certainly speaking on behalf of small towns and municipalities right across the province. That's certainly her role. I sit as a board member on the Municipalities Newfoundland and Labrador Board of Directors as the St. John's representative. But there's no doubt the needs and that happen right across our province can vary greatly depending on the population, the location. But the one thing that we do know is that we need to lean on each other more, and that there has been a lot of consultation around regionalization. MNL certainly has conducted a lot of it. The membership have spoken quite certainly loudly about that, and I certainly hope that this is an example of how we need to up the ante and really move that issue forward. And whether or not we're talking about regionalization, the Northeast Avalon, certainly, we have all these strong communities. We have 2 cities. We have, many partners there. We work together as a region, and that's regional cooperation. In other areas, of course, it would be a little bit more formalized. But I think that for the survival of everybody, for the best interests of the population in general, I think that that's something we really need to push.
And we can distinguish that from the kind of scary word of amalgamation.
Exactly, exactly.
Which also isn't necessarily always a bad thing, but
it's about
kind of
cooperation.
a taboo. Yeah,
cooperation and partnerships, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I like how you say that the municipalities have to lean on each other, because I think in hard times we learn that it's not just municipalities and organizations that lean on each other, it's people. And, I want to take you back to the storm. And, before your time in elected politics and during, you've always been quite a social activist and looking for social justice. And one of the things that struck me, and I think a lot of people during the storm, was how much the people of our city helped each other.
Absolutely.
And I'm wondering, I guess, if from your perspective as deputy mayor, did you see anything in that realm that makes you want to make more positive change in our community?
Absolutely. I think it was just a phenomenal testimony to neighborhoods and the kind of human spirit that we have, not only in the city of St. John's, but again, our region. Neighborhoods got out, people were helping each other, people who didn't know each other were out helping to shovel, prepare food, check on their neighbors, people without power. I myself, while I was doing my city business from home, certainly was in constant consultation with my 94-year-old neighbor around the corner to make sure that she was doing okay. I have a new Sudanese family who live right next door to me.
Oh, wow.
They never saw any tracks, so you need to check on these people. And I saw such incredible spirit from community members, people who went out and went out of their way. As soon as they got themselves shoveled out, were able to prepare food and get out there and try to help people who were in need.
Right.
And certainly social media certainly helped with that, to help for many people to identify people who were in need.
And we also, I think, saw how close people are to really significant hard times, whether it's one paycheck away or, one grocery store run away from, having significant shortages of food or money. The Stone Soup group in town, which was delivering food around, I think really highlighted that. So I think, do you think there's more that the city could do maybe to address the poverty issues?
Absolutely, and again, through cooperation. I actually had a meeting with the group today from Stone Soup.
Oh, okay.
And so, of course, they want to seriously tackle that issue. There will be a post-mortem on the storm, and that will be coming, no doubt. But I think the most important issue that's on the table right now are about the people who didn't have access to food. People who didn't have, people with accessibility issues, some people with mental health issues, people who didn't have any food and could not access food because the food banks weren't open for the first 3 days. And after that, even, it was a bit of a task. So I think that there really is an opportunity for a larger discussion about how community centers can continue to work together with the city. The city has a role to play with that.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that the post-mortem of the storm will include more than just snow clearing, which is what we're all kind of focused on at the time. There's much bigger issues.
Absolutely, and it really did unearth. Sometimes there were people who were taken care of, certainly within the system. But I think that people who really we saw who were hurting the most were the people low-income earners, because they lost their salaries, they didn't have money to purchase food, and oftentimes, according to this organization who was boots on the ground, those were the people who were falling through the cracks.
Right on. Well, we'll come back to more city topics after this, but thanks for chatting with us all about the storm. Okay. We'll be right back with more with Sheilagh O'Leary.
All right, girls.
Mom, you said it's played again.
Workplace injuries hurt the most at home.
When my legs get stronger, I want to play basketball, volleyball, I want to run. I was sick when I was a little baby. I had meningitis.
Even after they did the amputations, they said that it was likely he would not make it.
To now, you throw him on that bike and off he goes.
My bike helps me get my legs stronger.
Without the ramps, being able to afford his limbs and devices would be difficult.
Thank you for helping me get around.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Welcome back to Out of the Fog. I'm here with Deputy Mayor of City of St. John's, Sheilagh O'Leary. Thanks again for being here.
I'm delighted.
And we've talked all about the storm, which is kind of still top of mind for everybody in town. But there's a lot more going on in City Hall and a lot of other topics. So I wanted to kind of chat with you about some of those. So the first one that jumped out at me is the introduction of alcohol sales to movie theaters.
That's right.
And of course, last night at City Hall, the majority of council voted to allow it, you know, in the capacity that they can allow it. But you and Councillor Wally Collins objected. So, you know, I guess what is the basis of your objection to bringing in alcohol sales to a movie theater?
Well, you know, I think it's interesting because what I've actually witnessed is that we're starting to see a move away from family-friendly, child-friendly kind of entertainment. I think that the reason why I didn't think it was a wise idea is because we do actually have quite a wide variety of entertainment centers that actually offer alcohol.
We're known for them.
Exactly. And you know what? Who doesn't enjoy a social? That's fantastic. But I think that when we see, you know, family-oriented entertainment spaces start to introduce alcohol into a theater that generally is in the dark, we have sometimes the ushers are oftentimes part-time teenagers that are working in the theater. I just wonder, first of all, if somebody does get out of line or something like that, who's actually going to be doing the enforcement? I just think that what it does is it changes the dynamic of a family-friendly event. And of course, we just saw all of this wonderful renovations and newness happen in the Avalon Mall. The rec room is right there, right next door. Alcohol, you know, it's a great lounge, eating space, all kinds of wonderful games. But again, a slight shift away from the old gaming kind of entertainment that we've seen, where now there's more of a focus on adults. So for me, it was more about safety. It was more about ensuring that families can have optimal experiences. We have lots of opportunities to find entertainment and locations in this city and beyond for alcohol. So that was why I spoke the way I did.
And with that family-friendly approach, are there, like, I guess, what kind of efforts does the city put forward to make sure that there are activities for young people and families in town?
Well, we certainly do it through our community centers. Of course, we have, you know, our recreation centers, and we have a number of different family-oriented programs that we run certainly through the City of St. John's. And of course, we have a number of festival events. We have Chill Fest coming up now very soon. You know, there's a number of different things like that, organizations, events. Of course, the Loop has been such a huge success,
so
certainly,
popular.
with, you know, Bannerman Park Revival. Of course, we saw, you know, in Victoria Park, the same kind of thing.
I won't even tease you right now about the whole city being a skating rink.
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
Exactly. But there's lots of activities within community centers. But, you know, I guess for the larger issue is the fact that we were actually tasked to make a decision on that particular issue. And I actually heard from a lot of constituents who were not terribly pleased about the idea of introducing alcohol into a darkened theater.
And, you know, speaking of family-friendly places, of course, a longtime favorite in the city is Bowring Park. And I read a really interesting article in the St. John's Telegram this week about a bridge that you've been advocating for that I didn't really pay attention to. And of course, that's the big bridge that goes over where the old CN railway line is, kind of a center part of the park. So what kind of piqued your interest about that bridge and what's so special about it?
Well, you know, it was certainly brought to my attention. I mean, I love Bowring Park too. I mean, our parks are just fantastic. But Bowring Park, you know, certainly has a lot of great history there. But that bridge it has really significant architectural engineering significance. It was actually designed by Ove Arup, who is the one who, world-renowned engineer who actually designed the Sydney Opera House.
That's incredible.
Which is
incredible that we
incredible.
didn't know that.
Exactly. And actually, if you look at Robert Mellon's book, he actually does a feature on that in the Newfoundland modern architecture. So that I find it really interesting. Sometimes, as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, I find we're not the best at telling our own stories. So I think it's really important to highlight that. So when I discovered this, it was actually an architect, an engineering friend of mine who brought it to my attention. I thought, oh my gosh, this is a gem and it needs to be. And if you go and look at it, it's got some cracks in it, it's got graffiti, it has brush around it. So I've been bothering the staff at the city for a very long time to try to see if we could prioritize it and get it restored and renovated properly. Of course, because it's a pedestrian bridge, it's called a cantilever bridge. It doesn't have a high priority because the priorities certainly go towards structural bridges where cars and and regular traffic
necessary
like that
for
goes.
commute. And stuff.
Exactly. So understandably so, it has been low down on the priority list, but I'm very, very pleased to say, well, I'm not going to let it go because I do think it's such an asset. But I'm very pleased to say that we've been having negotiations certainly with Arup Canada because they are going to be celebrating their 20th anniversary in Canada, and they do fantastic work worldwide. And so I'm really hopeful that there's going to be a partnership there to see how we can bring that forward.
Right. And, that sounds relatively non-controversial, supporting and celebrating this really cool bridge that we have. But there's been a lot of topics that have, caused a lot more debate. And one of them being this new development on top of Atlantic Place.
Yes.
Or the Atlantic Place parking garage. Sorry, I should be more clear. And so I'm kind of curious about your position on that project, but also kind of more how we should be, deciding and determining whether kind of new big projects in our downtown core should be approved.
Well, there's no doubt. I'm a huge heritage advocate. I self-proclaimed, but that doesn't mean that you live in a petri dish. I mean, architecture and design moves and changes shape all the time. So you do need to be open to that. We have different levels of heritage design in our city. Even Churchill Square is kind of a modernist style.
Oh, really? Okay.
So there's a number of different areas, and of course it continues to grow and change over time. But we do know, as the oldest city in North America, that really a huge part of our significance is our history and our heritage, and the heritage buildings, many of which have already been eaten into, many have been destroyed over the years.
Or neglected.
Exactly. One of the issues with the Atlantic Place parking garage is that particular area, many, many years ago, was actually lifted out of the Heritage District. It was given a special zoning, spot zoning status. And as a result of that, it meant that there weren't the same restrictions that there were on other heritage buildings on Water Street or in the downtown core, which is, in my opinion, unfortunate. And so as a result of that, we're kind of chained to that contract, to that commitment that we made many years ago. So, and there was always a concession for a hotel as a part of that Atlantic Place parking garage. So officially, it's not part of the heritage zoning, but it does, because of the design, it actually does enter into public air rights. So there will be discussion about, the purchase of public air rights, which of course we all own as citizens, and that's public rights.
Something we're proud of.
Yes. But I guess the larger issue is really about design. How do we incorporate newer modern designs in an architecturally sensitive area that has such a strong history? And I don't think we've been doing a good enough job, honestly, at the City of St. John's, and I think that there's lots of work yet to be done.
And taking you away again from, your city hat, although this is involved in that, the province has now brought in its ban on plastic bags. You've been a very early advocate of that project.
Yes.
And, has been pushing it through for a while. So I'm wondering, I guess, about your reaction to the province, passing this legislation, and if you think that this is, this is it. Did you win the fight?
You won the battle. I
There
think
you go.
that's what it is, because the reality is there's always more improvements to make. I'm ecstatic. I did my little happy dance when I heard that the MHA, the Honourable Derek Bragg, came out and honoured the government's commitment, certainly to ban single-use plastic retail bags, and that's going to come into effect in July. But what we're seeing is beautiful because, of course, now businesses who really, have stepped up. We've seen Sobeys certainly come up, and the Liquor Corporation has already done it. They already know that the writing is on the wall. They've gotten ahead of it, and they've already just recently come out with a ban. That means less plastic that does not decompose that goes into our landfill. It saves us money.
And outside of our landfill.
And outside of our landfill. And so that basically is less plastic that does not decompose. And we know that plastics are a very serious issue, that, animals ingest it. It's in our oceans. It's everywhere. It's in our bodies. And so it's a really great first step. It took a long time to get here. But I think that what we're seeing now is that people are really, really conscientious about the plastic issues and how we need to get to a plastic-free kind of space. And so we're going to see a lot more of that. And certainly our federal government has made a promise to come out about straws and plastic utensils and things like that as well.
So what are the next steps? Do you think it involves kind of a broader ban on single-use plastic?
I think what's happening is a broader conversation.
Sure.
It's education, and just even the start with one plastic banning of bags has started a whole conversation about how we can be more environmentally sensitive, how we can be better stewards of our environment.
Cool. Earlier you mentioned that you are the board representative on the municipalities NL for St. John's. And I need to congratulate you because I know recently you've been appointed as the chair of the Women's Caucus.
Yes,
of that
that's right. Yes, and my vice chair is Mayor Dale Colburn from St. Lunaire-Griquet. So we have a great opportunity to work together from a very, very small town to the capital city and try to bring women's issues in the municipal sector forward.
Okay, so is it about, I guess, women's issues in the municipal sector, or is there a factor of getting more women to enter into politics? I guess, what is the scope of the women's organization within it? Well,
it's a large scope. The Women's Caucus came out of, certainly issues that a lot of women leaders were already having within their communities right across the province, weren't feeling supported. Obviously, we know the numbers are not there. We need to have for more equitable representation, certainly in municipalities, as we do in all levels of government. But specific to municipalities, we know that women are actually our leaders in many of the towns that we see right across the province. We want to make sure that they're actually in decision-making roles. And when they get there, how they can be supported. Because sometimes there are major issues that impact women that do not affect their male counterparts. So I think that we need to look at the whole picture and see how we can best support it. But, Melissa, it's like a year and a half away till our next municipal election.
Right. And I mean, municipal elections across Canada kind of tend to come up as maybe there's more opportunity for women there because the kind of gatekeeper aspect of political parties that exists at provincial and federal levels that sometimes gets some of the blame for not having enough women run in winnable ridings for major parties. So, is there, I guess, maybe with that removed, is there an opportunity to try to encourage more women to run at the municipal level?
I think so. And it really, municipal governance is the bricks and mortar. It's the boots on the ground. That's why I love it so much.
So close to community.
It is. You're so connected. You're dealing with your constituents one-on-one. You're listening to them on the phone. You're talking to them one-on-one in the supermarkets. My children have given up a long time ago going to the supermarkets with me.
I bet.
So it is really that face-to-face kind of contact that you have with the public. And then, of course, then you have the provincial government, of course, and then you start to get another tier, and then a federal, of course, then there's also Indigenous bands as well. Equal Voice, as you know, as the chair of Equal Voice at NL, represents women of all the different governance sectors.
Absolutely.
And it's extremely important that we keep that conversation going.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on that role.
Thank you.
And I know you'll make a big difference there. And thanks again for joining us. I know it has been probably a very crazy month for everybody at the City of St. John's.
I will breathe eventually.
Perfect. And so good luck with the rest of the cleanup, and keep us up to date on the post-mortem, because we'd love to hear, I guess, what kind of lessons and future plans come forward from the storm.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for your interest as well.
Oh, thanks. We'll be right back with more Out of the Fog.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Thanks for watching Out of the Fog, and thank you so much to Deputy Mayor of the City of St. John's, Sheilagh O'Leary, for joining us for such a wide-ranging conversation. I know it's been a very busy week for our City Council, and especially for our City Council workers who've spent the last few weeks working tirelessly to get our roads as clear as possible. So a special shout out to them as well in these post-storm days. And thanks again to Sheilagh, and for you for watching. We'll see you next time on Out of the Fog.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.